Admiral Kexathurian sat in his command chair on the bridge of the massive Imperial warship Eternal Dominion. His blue-scaled hands moved across the control panel as he checked the daily reports. The Zephyrian border system was quiet today, just like every other day for the past 3 years. Nothing interesting ever happened out here on the edge of Imperial space. The Admiral's 4 eyes scanned the star charts, showing the empty void beyond the galactic rim. Sometimes he wondered what lay out there in the darkness between galaxies. Surely nothing important. The Galactic Empire had already found and conquered every intelligent species worth conquering. Any civilizations left in the outer rim would be primitive tribes barely capable of spaceflight. "Admiral," called Lieutenant Zex from the sensor station. "We have detected an unknown vessel approaching from the galactic rim." Kexthurian's head turned toward the sensor officer. An unknown vessel? That was unusual. "Show me," he ordered. The main screen flickered to life, displaying a long-range sensor image of the approaching ship. Kexathurian stared at it for a moment, then began to laugh. Several other officers on the bridge joined in. The vessel looked like someone had taken scrap metal and welded it together randomly. Its hull was covered in thick plates of some crude material, bolted and welded in layers. Strange tubes and boxes stuck out from its surface at odd angles. The ship had no elegant curves or smooth lines like proper Imperial vessels. It looked more like a floating junkyard than a starship. "What is that thing?" asked Commander Vex, the ship's second in command. "It looks like it was built in someone's backyard." "Probably was," Kexthurian replied, wiping tears from his eyes. "Look at those engines. Are those chemical thrusters? I haven't seen anything that primitive in centuries." The sensor readings confirmed the Admiral's guess. The unknown ship was using simple chemical rockets for propulsion. Its hull appeared to be made of basic metal alloys. The vessel showed no signs of energy shields, antimatter drives, or quantum weapons. By Imperial standards, it was incredibly backward. "Sir, the vessel is transmitting," reported the communications officer. "Audio and visual signals on multiple frequencies." "Put it on screen," Kexathurian ordered, curious to see what manner of primitive aliens had stumbled into Imperial space. The screen showed the bridge of the alien vessel. A strange creature sat in the captain's chair. It had pale skin, short brown fur on its head, and only 2 eyes. The being wore a simple uniform of some dark material. Behind it, other similar creatures worked at basic control panels. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth ship Defiance," the creature said in a clear voice. The ship's computers quickly translated the alien language. "We come in peace, seeking diplomatic contact with representatives of the Galactic Empire. Please respond." More laughter echoed across the Imperial bridge. Earth? What kind of name was that for a planet? And what was this United Earth government? It sounded like these aliens called themselves humans. "Look at their technology," snorted Lieutenant Zex. "Those control panels look like they're from the Dark Ages. Are those actually physical buttons and switches?" "And look at the bridge," added Commander Vex. "No holographic displays, no neural interfaces. How do they even pilot that thing?" Kexthurian studied the human captain on the screen. The female seemed calm and professional, but her ship was clearly centuries behind Imperial technology. These humans probably didn't even understand how primitive they were compared to the mighty Galactic Empire. "Sir, should we respond to their transmission?" asked the communications officer. "Not yet," Kexthurian replied. "Let's learn more about these humans first. Run a full sensor sweep of their vessel." The ship's powerful sensors focused on the human vessel, scanning every inch of its crude hull. The results appeared on tactical displays around the bridge. Imperial officers gathered to study the readings, shaking their heads in amazement at the primitive technology. "Look at this," said the chief science officer. "Their hull is just layers of metal plates welded together. No force field generators, no energy barriers. It's like they're still in the age of armor plating." "What about weapons?" Kexthurian asked. "Hard to tell, sir. There are some large structures that might be weapon mounts, but they're not powered up. No energy signatures at all. If they have weapons, they must be purely mechanical." "Projectile weapons?" Commander Vex asked with disbelief. "You mean they still throw rocks at each other?" The science officer nodded. "Appears so. Very primitive indeed." Kexthurian leaned back in his command chair, considering the situation. Here was a perfect opportunity to demonstrate Imperial power to these backward humans. The Empire's standard procedure for first contact with primitive species was simple. Show overwhelming force, demand immediate surrender, then incorporate the new species as subjects of the Empire. These humans would make excellent workers in the Outer Rim mining colonies. They seemed sturdy enough, and their primitive technology meant they posed no threat whatsoever to Imperial forces. The Eternal Dominion alone could probably conquer their entire civilization. "Admiral," the communications officer spoke up again. "The human vessel is repeating its transmission. They're requesting peaceful diplomatic contact." Peaceful contact, Kexathurian mused. How quaint. They actually think they can negotiate with the Galactic Empire as equals. The Admiral stood up from his chair and walked to the main view screen. The human ship hung in space before them, ugly and crude compared to the sleek lines of Imperial vessels. Its thick armor, plating, and jutting weapon mounts made it look more like an ancient siege tower than a starship. But there was something else about the vessel that nagged at the Admiral's mind. Despite its primitive appearance, the ship maintained perfect formation and showed no signs of mechanical stress. For something built with such crude technology, it seemed remarkably well constructed. "Sir, what are your orders?" Commander Vex asked. Kexathurian made his decision. "We will conduct a routine compliance inspection. These humans need to learn their place in the galactic order. They will surrender their vessel for examination and submit to Imperial authority." "And if they refuse?" the commander asked. "Then we will demonstrate why the Galactic Empire rules the galaxy," Kexathurian replied, coldly. "Prepare the ship for action. Charge weapons and raise shields. I doubt these primitives will cause any trouble, but Imperial protocol must be followed." The bridge crew jumped into action, preparing their mighty warship for potential combat. Warning lights flashed as the ship's massive energy weapons powered up. Force fields shimmered to life around the hull. The Eternal Dominion was ready for war, though everyone aboard doubted these humans would be foolish enough to fight. "Open a channel to the human vessel," Kexathurian ordered. "Channel open, sir." The Admiral straightened his uniform and put on his most intimidating expression. Time to show these humans what real power looked like. "Attention, human vessel," he began in his most commanding voice. "This is Admiral Kexathurian of the Imperial Third Fleet. You have entered Imperial space without authorization. You will immediately surrender your vessel for inspection and submit to Imperial authority. Comply now, or face the consequences." On the screen, Captain Chen listened to the translation of the Admiral's demands. Her expression remained calm, but something flickered in her eyes. Was it fear? Kexathurian hoped so. Fear would make the conquest much easier. "Admiral," Captain Chen replied carefully, "we come in peace seeking diplomatic relations. Surely we can discuss this like civilized beings." Kexathurian's laugh echoed across the bridge. Civilized beings? These humans had no idea who they were dealing with. Admiral Kexathurian looked at the human captain on his screen with growing impatience. These creatures clearly did not understand the situation they were in. The Galactic Empire did not negotiate with primitive species. It conquered them. "Human captain," he said in a stern voice, "you seem to misunderstand. This is not a negotiation. You will surrender your vessel immediately, or I will take it by force." Captain Sarah Chen remained calm on her bridge. She looked directly at the Admiral through the screen. "Admiral, we are a peaceful exploration vessel on a diplomatic mission. We have no intention of surrendering to anyone. Perhaps we can arrange a meeting to discuss our peoples working together." The Imperial bridge crew burst into laughter again. Working together? With primitives who still used chemical rockets? The idea was ridiculous. "Sir," whispered Commander Vex, "should we just disable their engines and tow them in? Their technology is so primitive it would be easy." Kexathurian nodded. A show of force would end this quickly. These humans needed to learn that resistance was pointless. "Target their engine section with low-power plasma bolts. Disable their propulsion, but do not destroy the vessel. We want them intact for study." "Weapons targeted, sir," reported the tactical officer. "Plasma cannons charged to minimum power." The Admiral turned back to the screen. "Captain Chen, this is your final warning. Surrender now, or I will disable your ship and take it by force." Sarah Chen's expression hardened. "Admiral, I strongly advise against taking hostile action. You would be making a serious mistake." "The only mistake," Kexathurian replied coldly, "is your refusal to submit to Imperial authority. Fire." The Eternal Dominion's plasma cannons erupted in brilliant blue beams. The energy bolts streaked across space toward the human vessel. Even at minimum power, the weapons contained enough energy to melt through the armor of most primitive ships. The shots should disable the human vessel without causing too much damage. The plasma bolts struck the Defiance directly in the engine section. Brilliant light flared as the energy weapons made contact with the ship's hull. The Imperial crew watched their sensors, expecting to see the human ship's engines go dark. Instead, something impossible happened. The energy from the plasma bolts seemed to spread across the surface of the human ship like water. The thick armor plating glowed briefly, then returned to normal. The ship's engines continued burning steadily. All systems remained fully operational. Silence fell across the Imperial bridge. Officers stared at their sensor readings in confusion. The energy weapons had made direct contact, but caused no damage at all. "That's impossible," whispered the tactical officer. "Those shots should have melted right through their hull." "Run a diagnostic on the weapons systems," Kex Thurian ordered, his voice tight with confusion. "Weapons systems are functioning perfectly." "Sir," came the reply. "The plasma bolts hit their target and delivered full energy." "Then why is their ship undamaged?" demanded Commander Vex. The science officer studied his readings carefully. "Sir, it appears their hull armor is somehow dispersing. The plasma bolts spread across the entire surface instead of penetrating." "That's not possible with primitive metal armor," Kex Thurian said. "What kind of material could do that?" On the main screen, Captain Chen was speaking to her crew. Though the audio was muted, her people moved with quick efficiency around their bridge. Warning lights flashed on the human vessel as it came to full alert status. "Admiral," Chen's voice came through the speakers. "You have just fired weapons at a diplomatic vessel. That was a serious mistake. I'm giving you one chance to stand down and open peaceful negotiations." Kex Thurian felt his face flush with anger. "Stand down? He was an admiral of the Imperial fleet. No primitive alien would give him orders. Increase power to 50%, he commanded. "Target their bridge section." "Sir," the tactical officer hesitated. 50% power could cause significant damage." "Do it! These humans need to learn their place." The plasma cannons charged to higher power levels. This time, the energy beams would have enough force to punch through almost any armor. The shots fired again, brilliant streams of superheated plasma racing toward the human ship. Once again, the impossible happened. The energy weapons struck the Defiance's hull and dispersed harmlessly across its surface. The armor plating glowed brighter this time, but held firm. Not even a scratch appeared on the human vessel. "What is that armor made of?" Commander Vex asked in amazement. Before anyone could answer, the human ship began to move. Its crude chemical engines flared brighter, and the vessel started turning toward the Imperial warship. The movement was smooth and controlled, showing none of the clumsiness expected from such primitive technology. "Sir," reported the sensor officer, "the human vessel is changing course. They're heading straight for us." Kex Thurian watched, in disbelief as the ugly human ship accelerated toward his massive warship. Were these creatures actually planning to attack, with their primitive vessel against the might of an Imperial dreadnought? "They must be insane," he muttered. "All weapons. Target the human ship. Full power. Destroy it before it can ram us." Every weapon on the Eternal Dominion opened fire at once. Plasma cannons, particle beams, and quantum disruptors all focused on the approaching human vessel. The combined firepower was enough to destroy a small moon. The weapons struck the Defiance in a brilliant display of energy. Space around the human ship lit up like a star as multiple energy beams converged on its hull. The Imperial crew expected to see the primitive vessel vaporized instantly. Instead, they watched in horror as their most powerful weapons scattered harmlessly across the human ship's armor like raindrops on metal. The strange plating absorbed and dispersed every shot. The Defiance continued its approach, completely undamaged. "This is impossible," Kex Thurian shouted. "Nothing can resist our weapons like that." "Sir," the science officer called out, "I'm detecting unusual energy patterns in their hull armor. It appears to be some kind of advanced composite material. It's redirecting our energy weapons instead of absorbing them." "Advanced?" Commander Vex asked. "But they're primitives. Look at their technology." The human ship was now much closer, and details of its construction became clearer on the visual sensors. What had looked like crude welding from a distance now appeared more purposeful. The seemingly random armor plating was actually carefully layered in complex patterns. The jutting structures on the hull weren't random additions, but deliberate design elements. "Sir," the tactical officer reported with growing alarm, "the human vessel is still approaching at high speed. Impact in 30 seconds. Evasive maneuvers," Kex Thurian ordered. "Get us out of their path." The massive Imperial warship began to turn, its engines straining to move the enormous vessel, but the human ship adjusted its course to match, staying on an intercept trajectory. The Defiance was smaller and more maneuverable than the Imperial dreadnought. 20 seconds to impact, came the countdown. "Can't you move us faster?" the Admiral demanded. "We're at maximum thrust, sir. The human ship is just more agile." 10 seconds. The ugly human vessel filled their forward view screen, growing larger by the moment. Its thick armor plating and strange weapon mounts looked suddenly threatening, instead of primitive. "All hands! Brace for impact!" Kexthurian shouted. At the last second, the human ship veered slightly to port, passing close alongside the Imperial vessel. As it swept past, previously hidden weapon ports opened along its hull. But instead of energy weapons, massive metal barrels emerged. "What are those?" someone whispered. The answer came immediately as the human weapons fired. But these weren't energy beams or plasma bolts. They were solid projectiles, chunks of metal moving at incredible speed. The projectiles slammed into the Imperial ship's shields with tremendous force. The energy barriers that had protected Imperial vessels for centuries were designed to deflect energy weapons. They were completely useless against solid objects moving at high velocity. The metal projectiles punched right through the shields and struck the hull with devastating effect. Alarms began blaring throughout the ship as armor plating buckled and compartments lost pressure. The Eternal Dominion shuddered under the impact of weapons that no civilized species would ever consider using. "Damage report!" Kexthurian demanded. "Multiple hull breaches on decks 7 through 12, came the frantic reply. "Shield generators offline. We have fires in 3 compartments." The Admiral stared at the tactical display in shock. His mighty warship, pride of the Imperial fleet, had just been damaged by a primitive vessel using weapons that threw pieces of metal. On the communications screen, Captain Chen's face appeared again. This time, she was not smiling. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the damage reports from the Imperial ship scroll across her screens. The alien vessel was still intact, but it was hurt. Good. Maybe now they would listen to reason. "Captain," called Lieutenant Martinez from the weapons console. "The alien ship is attempting to retreat. They're trying to put distance between us." Sarah nodded. "Let them pull back for now. We've made our point. But keep all weapons ready and maintain our intercept course." She turned to the communications officer. "Open a channel to the Imperial ship." "Channel open, Captain." Sarah looked directly into the camera, knowing her image would appear on the alien Admiral's bridge. "Admiral Kexthurian, this is your last warning. Cease hostile actions immediately and prepare for peaceful negotiations. You have seen that your weapons cannot harm us, while ours can certainly harm you." On her screen, the alien Admiral's blue face showed a mixture of anger and confusion. His 4 eyes darted between different displays on his bridge as his crew worked frantically at their stations. "Impossible," the Admiral muttered, loud enough for the microphone to pick up. "Your ship is primitive. Your technology is centuries behind ours. How can you possibly—" "Admiral," Sarah interrupted, "you made assumptions about us based on appearances. That was your first mistake. Firing on a diplomatic vessel was your second. Don't make a third." Behind her, the bridge crew of the Defiance worked with calm efficiency. Unlike the elegant holographic displays of the Imperial ship, the human bridge was filled with physical controls, backup systems, and redundant equipment. Everything was built to function even under the worst conditions. "Captain," reported Chief Engineer Kim from her station. "Hull integrity holding at 100%. Armor dispersed their energy weapons perfectly. All systems nominal." "Ammunition status?" Sarah asked. "Plenty of tungsten rods left in the magazines, Captain. Railguns are charged and ready." On the main display, the Imperial ship was indeed trying to retreat, but its massive size made it slow and clumsy. The Defiance easily matched its movements, staying within weapons range. The human ship might look crude compared to the alien vessel, but it was built for exactly this kind of combat. "Sir," came a voice from the Imperial ship's bridge. "The human vessel is maintaining pursuit. We cannot outrun them." Admiral Kexthurian looked at his tactical display with growing horror. His ship was bigger, more advanced, and had a crew of thousands. Yet this single human vessel had damaged his mighty warship while taking no damage in return. How was that possible? "Analysis of their weapons," he demanded. "They appeared to be using kinetic projectiles, sir," reported the science officer. "Solid tungsten rods accelerated to extremely high velocity by magnetic rails. Basically, they're shooting metal spears at us." "Metal spears?" Commander Vex asked in disbelief. "That's the most primitive weapon concept imaginable." "Yes, sir. But they're moving at significant fractions of light speed. The kinetic energy is enormous, and our shields are useless against solid projectiles." Kexthurian felt his confidence crumbling. The Galactic Empire had spent centuries perfecting energy weapons and energy defenses. No civilized species used kinetic weapons anymore. They were crude, inefficient, and required massive amounts of power to accelerate projectiles to useful velocities, but these humans had somehow made kinetic weapons work at the level of ship-to-ship combat, and their strange armor was specifically designed to counter energy weapons. It was as if they had studied Imperial technology and deliberately developed counters to every advantage the Empire possessed. Sir, the communications officer called out. We're receiving another transmission from the human vessel. Put it through, the Admiral said reluctantly. Captain Chen appeared on screen again. Admiral, I can see your ship is attempting to retreat. That's not going to work. We're faster and more maneuverable than you are. This can end one of two ways. You can agree to peaceful negotiations, or we can continue this fight until your ship is disabled. You cannot defeat an Imperial dreadnought with one primitive ship, Kexathurian shouted. Admiral, Sarah replied, calmly. We already are defeating your dreadnought. Your weapons can't hurt us, while ours can certainly hurt you. The outcome of this battle is not in question. To prove her point, she turned to her weapons officer. Lieutenant Martinez, show the Admiral what our secondary weapons can do. Target their sensor array, minimum power. Aye, Captain. Firing railgun 7, single shot. A single tungsten rod shot from the Defiance at incredible speed. It struck the Imperial ship's main sensor dish and tore right through it, leaving a gaping hole in the sophisticated equipment. Alarms immediately began sounding on the alien bridge as their long-range sensors went offline. How? Whispered Commander Vex. How can they be so accurate with projectile weapons? The answer was visible on the human ship's hull, though the Imperial crew didn't recognize it. What they had mistaken for crude sensor equipment was actually an advanced targeting system designed specifically for kinetic weapons. Every shot was guided by computers that calculated trajectory, target movement, and countless other variables. Sir, reported the Imperial tactical officer, we've lost main sensors. Targeting systems are operating at reduced efficiency. Then, use the backup systems, Kexthurian ordered. The human ship is jamming our backup sensors, sir. They're using some kind of electronic warfare system we've never encountered. On the Defiance, Lieutenant Park at the electronic warfare station smiled as her equipment disrupted the alien ship's targeting systems. Human ships were built with the assumption that they would always face technologically superior enemies. Every advantage had to be exploited. Captain, she reported, their targeting systems are severely degraded. They couldn't hit us now even, if their energy weapons could penetrate our armor. Sarah nodded. Maintain jamming. Helm, bring us around for another pass. The human ship swung around the Imperial vessel in a wide arc, its engines flaring as it maneuvered for another attack. Run! The Defiance moved like a fighter craft despite its size, turning and accelerating with an agility that seemed impossible for something built with such primitive technology. How can they maneuver like that? Asked the Imperial science officer. Their engines don't have nearly enough power for those acceleration rates. The answer lay in the ship's construction. What looked like crude armor plating was actually a sophisticated system of modular components. Parts of the ship could be jettisoned to reduce mass, while internal systems could be reconfigured on the fly. The Defiance was essentially rebuilding itself during combat to optimize for each situation. Sir, the Imperial engineer reported, they're using their reaction mass differently than any ship I've ever seen. They're actually ejecting parts of their hull to increase acceleration. They're destroying their own ship? Commander Vex asked. No, sir. The ejected components appear to be designed for this. They have replacement sections sliding into place automatically. Admiral Kexathurian watched in fascination and horror as the human ship literally transformed itself during the battle. Armor sections moved, weapon mounts reconfigured, and the entire vessel seemed to adapt to the changing combat situation. It was like fighting a living creature rather than a machine. Admiral, Captain Chen's voice came over the speakers again. This is your final chance. Stand down and prepare for negotiations, or we will disable your ship completely. Kexathurian looked around his bridge at his confused and frightened crew. His mighty warship was being systematically defeated by a single human vessel that looked like it had been built in a scrapyard. Every assumption about Imperial technological superiority was crumbling before his eyes. Sir, whispered Commander Vex, perhaps we should consider their offer. We clearly don't understand their capabilities. Never, the Admiral snarled. The Empire does not surrender to primitives. All weapons, continue firing. Ram them if necessary. The war. Imperial ship's energy weapons fired again, filling space with deadly plasma and particle beams. The human ship took the hits directly, its strange armor absorbing and dispersing the energy as before. Not a single shot penetrated the Defiance's defenses. In response, the human ship's railguns spoke again. This time, multiple projectiles struck the Imperial vessel along its hull. Armor plating buckled and tore under the kinetic impact. More. Compartments lost pressure as tungsten rods punched completely through the ship. Multiple hull breaches, came the damage report. We're losing atmosphere on 15 decks. Sir, the chief engineer called out, if they keep hitting us like this, we'll lose structural integrity. The ship could break apart. Admiral Kexathurian stared at the tactical display showing his ship's damage. Red lights marked breached compartments. Throughout the vessel, His proud dreadnought was being torn apart piece by weapons that any civilized species would consider primitive. "How?" he whispered. "How can this be happening?" Emperor Zarthis sat on his crystal throne in the heart of the imperial capital world, listening to Admiral Kexathorian's report with growing disbelief. The massive holographic display in the throne room showed the battle footage from the Zephyrian border system, and what he saw challenged everything he thought he knew about the galaxy. "You're telling me," the Emperor said slowly, "that a single primitive vessel defeated one of our dreadnoughts?" "Not defeated, Your Majesty," Admiral Kexathorian replied carefully. "We managed to retreat with the ship intact. But yes, they caused significant damage while taking none themselves. And their weapons were what exactly? Kinetic projectiles. Sire, they throw metal rods at extremely high velocity." The Emperor's 6 arms gestured in confusion. Around the throne room, the highest officials of the Galactic Empire watched the recordings with equal bewilderment. Energy shields that had protected Imperial ships for millennia had been useless against the human weapons. "This makes no sense," declared Admiral Thexkor, commander of the Second Fleet. "Kinetic weapons are primitive. No advanced civilization uses them. The power requirements alone make them impractical." "Yet these humans made them work, Emperor," Zarthis mused. "And their armor somehow disperses our energy weapons. How is that possible?" "Our scientists are studying the battle recordings now, Your Majesty," reported the Imperial Science Minister. "Preliminary analysis suggests their armor uses some form of metamaterial composite that spreads energy across the entire hull surface." "Metamaterials?" The Emperor's voice rose. "Those are theoretical concepts. No one has successfully built large-scale metamaterial structures." "Apparently someone has, sire." The Emperor stood from his throne and walked to the holographic display. The image showed the human ship UES Defiance in all its crude glory: thick armor plating, visible weld lines, jutting weapon mounts, and chemical rocket engines. It looked like something from the dark ages of space travel. "Where did these humans come from?" he demanded. "Unknown, Your Majesty. They claim to be from a world called Earth, but our star charts show no such planet in the area they approached from." "Send scout ships to investigate. I want to know everything about these humans." Admiral Kexathorian shifted uncomfortably. "Sire, we've already dispatched 3 scout fleets to search for their home world. None have returned." A chill ran through the throne room. Scout fleets were fast and well-armed. If they weren't returning, it meant the humans had either captured or destroyed them. "How many ships?" the Emperor asked quietly. 15 vessels total, Your Majesty. All contact was lost approximately 6 hours after they entered the search area." Emperor Zarthis felt his confidence beginning to crack. 15 Imperial ships, gone without a trace. These humans were far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. "Your Majesty," the Imperial Intelligence Director stepped forward, "we may have found the answer to where these humans originated." "Show me." The holographic display changed to show a star map of the local galactic region. Red dots marked the locations where Imperial scout ships had disappeared. But there was a pattern to the disappearances that was deeply troubling. The missing ships all vanished in systems we thought were uninhabited, the Intelligence Director explained. "But our deep space telescopes have detected signs of artificial structures in many of these systems. Structures we previously dismissed as asteroid mining operations." "Asteroid mining?" "Yes, sire. But closer examination suggests these may actually be military installations, hidden bases disguised as mining equipment." The Emperor studied the star map with growing alarm. If the red dots represented human bases, then these creatures had established a network of fortified positions across a huge area of space, and they had done it right under the Empire's nose. "How long have they been there?" he asked. "Unknown, Your Majesty. Possibly decades, maybe longer. And we never noticed?" "Their installations appear designed to avoid detection by our sensors. They've been watching us while remaining invisible themselves." The throne room fell silent as the implications sank in. These humans hadn't just stumbled into Imperial space. They had been systematically studying the Empire for years, learning its weaknesses and preparing for eventual contact. The encounter at Zephyria hadn't been first contact at all. It had been a test. "Sir," Admiral Thexkor spoke up, "if they've been observing us for so long, they would know our military capabilities, our technology, our tactics. They could design their own systems specifically to counter ours, which explains their weapons and armor," the Science Minister added. "They built their ships to fight Imperial vessels. Kinetic weapons to bypass our energy shields. Metamaterial armor to defeat our energy weapons." Emperor Zarthis returned to his throne, his mind racing. The Galactic Empire had ruled the galaxy for over 3,000 years. In all that time, no species had ever posed a serious threat to Imperial dominance. Most civilizations were incorporated peacefully after a simple show of force. Those that resisted were quickly crushed by Imperial military might. But these humans were different. They had spent years preparing for this confrontation. They had studied Imperial strengths and developed specific counters to each one. Worst of all, they had done it all in secret, establishing hidden bases throughout Imperial space. Your Majesty, the intelligence director continued, there's more. Our long-range sensors have detected unusual activity in the Sol system. Sol? The system these humans claim as their home. Our deep space telescopes have been observing it since Admiral Kex Thurian's report. What we found is disturbing. The holographic display shifted again, showing a distant view of a yellow star with several planets orbiting it. At first glance, it looked like any normal solar system. But as the image zoomed in, details became visible that made the Emperor's blood run cold. The third planet from the star, presumably Earth, was surrounded by a massive ring of artificial structures. What at first appeared to be moons were actually enormous space stations. Orbital platforms bristled with weapon emplacements that could be seen even from this distance. How big are those stations? The Emperor asked. Each one is approximately the size of a small moon, sire. There are at least 20 of them that we can detect. 20 moon-sized battle stations? That's just what we can see from this distance. Your Majesty, there are likely many more smaller installations. The image zoomed in further, showing the space around Earth in greater detail. The planet itself seemed to be the center of a vast military complex. Ships moved between the orbital stations in organized patterns. Supply convoys traveled to and from the outer planets of the system. But most disturbing of all were the ships themselves. From this distance, they looked like the same crude, ugly vessels Admiral Kex Thurian had encountered. But there were hundreds of them, maybe thousands. Are those all warships? The Emperor asked. We believe so, sire. They're all constructed in the same style as the vessel that defeated Admiral Kex Thurian's dreadnought. Emperor Zarthus stared at the display in growing horror. The humans hadn't sent one primitive ship to test Imperial defenses. They had an entire fleet of these vessels, a fleet specifically designed to fight and defeat Imperial forces. Sir, Admiral Thexcor said quietly, if each of those ships has the same capabilities as the one we encountered, they could pose a serious threat to Imperial forces. How serious? The Emperor demanded. If our current tactics and technology are ineffective against them. Very serious indeed, Your Majesty. The Emperor considered the situation carefully. For the first time in Imperial history, they faced an enemy that might actually be able to challenge them militarily. These humans had spent years preparing for war with the Empire. They had superior defensive technology, weapons designed to bypass Imperial defenses, and an entire civilization ready for battle. Your Majesty, the intelligence director added, there's one more thing. We've been monitoring human communications traffic. They're not just preparing for war, they're preparing for conquest. What do you mean? Our analysts have detected massive ship construction programs, military mobilization across multiple star systems, and resource gathering on an unprecedented scale. This isn't a defensive preparation. They're building an invasion fleet. The throne room erupted in shocked murmurs. The idea of primitives from beyond the rim invading the mighty Galactic Empire seemed impossible, but the evidence was mounting that these humans were far from primitive. How long before they're ready to attack? The Emperor asked. Unknown, sire, but based on their construction rates, possibly within months. Emperor Zarthus rose from his throne again, his mind made up. Summon the fleet commanders, alert all military installations. If these humans want war, we'll give them war. The Galactic Empire has never been defeated, and we won't start now. But even as he spoke the words, doubt gnawed at his mind. These humans had already proven they could defeat Imperial ships. They had been planning this confrontation for years, and they had an entire civilization ready for war. For the first time in his reign, Emperor Zarthus wondered if the Galactic Empire might actually lose. 6 months after the first encounter at Zephyria, Emperor Zarthus stood in his private chambers looking out at the capital city below. The view that had once filled him with pride now only reminded him of how much had changed. Human ships moved openly through Imperial space, no longer hiding behind disguises or operating from secret bases. The war that everyone expected had never come. Instead, something far more unsettling had happened. The humans had simply arrived. Your Majesty, his aide announced from the doorway. Admiral Chen is here for the treaty signing. Zarthus turned from the window. Send her in. Sarah Chen, entered the chamber wearing the crisp blue uniform of the United Earth Space Force. Her new rank insignia marked her as Admiral of the Human Expeditionary Fleet. She had been promoted after her successful diplomatic mission to Imperial space, though everyone understood it had really been a military operation. "Your Majesty," Sarah said with a respectful bow, "thank you for agreeing to the final negotiations." The Emperor gestured to a comfortable chair across from his desk. "Admiral Chen, I must admit this is not how I expected things to proceed after our first encounter." Sarah smiled as she sat down. "To be honest, Emperor, we weren't sure how it would go either. We hoped for peaceful contact, but we prepared for war." "Yes, I've seen your preparations," Zarthis said dryly. "Your entire civilization mobilized for conflict with us." "We studied the Galactic Empire for 50 years before making contact," Sarah admitted. "We knew about your expansion methods, your military doctrine, your treatment of conquered species. We couldn't allow Earth to become another Imperial subject world." The Emperor leaned back in his chair. "Yet you could have simply stayed hidden. Your concealment technology is remarkably effective. We never would have found you." Hiding forever wasn't really an option. Eventually, we would have been discovered. Better to make contact on our terms when we were ready. Through the chamber's windows, both leaders could see human cargo ships unloading at the Imperial spaceport. The strange, ugly vessels looked out of place among the elegant Imperial ships, but they carried goods that had quickly become essential to Imperial commerce. "Your people's technology," the Emperor said, "is unlike anything we've encountered. Your ships look primitive, but they outperform ours in almost every category." "Different design philosophy," Sarah explained. "The Empire builds beautiful ships, optimized for energy-based warfare against equally advanced opponents. We build ugly ships optimized for survival against technologically superior enemies." "And your armor technology?" "Metamaterial composites designed specifically to counter energy weapons. We spent decades analyzing Imperial military broadcasts to understand your weapons systems. Then we designed our defenses accordingly." The Emperor shook his head in amazement. "You planned this entire encounter from the beginning." "Not the encounter. Specifically," Sarah corrected. "We prepared for every possible scenario: peaceful contact, limited conflict, or full-scale war. We were ready for anything." A soft chime announced the arrival of the treaty documents. The Emperor's secretary entered with an ornate case containing the formal agreements that would reshape the galaxy's political landscape. "The Terra Accords," the secretary announced, placing the case on the Emperor's desk. Sarah looked at the elaborate case with amusement. "You know, Admiral, we prepared our own version of this treaty. Much simpler document, single-page, basic text format." "I've seen it," Zarthis replied. "Very practical, but Imperial tradition requires certain formalities." He opened the case and removed the beautifully illuminated treaty documents. Page after page of elegant script outlined the terms that had taken months to negotiate. Terms that granted humanity something no other species in galactic history had achieved: independent sovereignty within Imperial space. "Article 7 still troubles me," the Emperor said as he reviewed the documents. "Your right to maintain armed vessels throughout Imperial territory. Our ships will only be used for defensive purposes and protecting human trade interests," Sarah assured him. "We have no intention of conquering Imperial worlds." "But you could, couldn't you?" the Emperor asked quietly. "If you wanted to." Sarah met his gaze directly. "Your Majesty, our military analysts estimate we could capture and hold approximately 40% of core Imperial systems before facing effective resistance. But conquest was never our goal. We want partnership, not domination." The casual way she discussed devastating Imperial military might send a chill through the Emperor. These humans spoke of their capabilities with the same tone others might, used to discuss the weather. "Your people continue to amaze me, Admiral. You've achieved in months what no species has managed in 3,000 years. You forced the Empire to treat you as equals." "With respect, Your Majesty, we didn't force anything. We simply demonstrated that the cost of treating us as subjects would be too high. Much easier to treat us as partners." The Emperor picked up his ceremonial signing stylus. "These accords will change everything, you know. Other species will see what you've accomplished. They'll start asking why they can't have the same status." "That's not really our concern," Sarah replied diplomatically, "though we'd be happy to share our technological advances with any species interested in peaceful cooperation." As if summoned by her words, chimes announced another arrival. The Emperor's aide entered with a concerned expression. "Your Majesty, representatives from the Andromedan Collective are requesting an audience. They want to discuss trade relations with the humans." Sarah and the Emperor exchanged glances. The Andromedans were one of the Empire's most important subject species. If they were seeking direct contact with humanity, it meant the implications of the Terra Accords were already spreading. "Schedule them for tomorrow," the Emperor instructed. "Today, we finish our business with Earth." He signed the treaty documents, with careful strokes, officially recognizing humanity as the first independent species within Imperial space. Sarah added her own signature with a simple, practical pen that looked crude compared to the Emperor's elegant stylus. "It's done," Zarthus said as he sealed the documents. "Humanity is now a sovereign partner of the Galactic Empire." Sarah smiled. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I think this will benefit both our peoples." Through the windows, they could see more human ships arriving at the spaceport. But these weren't the crude-looking vessels that had first appeared 6 months ago. These were sleek, elegant ships that combined human engineering with Imperial aesthetics. The two civilizations were already learning from each other. "Admiral," the Emperor said as Sarah prepared to leave, "there's one thing I must ask. How many ships do you really have?" Sarah paused at the doorway. "Enough, Your Majesty. More than enough." She left without giving specific numbers, but the Emperor had his answer. The humans had come to this negotiation from a position of overwhelming strength, yet they had chosen partnership over conquest. Perhaps these strange creatures from beyond the rim truly were different from every other species the Empire had encountered. As he watched Sarah's shuttle depart for her flagship, the Emperor reflected on how much the galaxy had changed. For 3,000 years, the Galactic Empire had been the sole superpower, ruling through military might and technological superiority. Now, suddenly, they had a partner, an equal. It would take time to adjust to the new reality. Imperial citizens would have to learn that humans weren't subjects to be commanded, but partners to be respected. The military would have to develop new doctrines for fighting alongside human vessels instead of against them. Diplomats would have to learn to negotiate with a species that had spent decades studying their every move. But perhaps most challenging of all, the Empire would have to accept that they were no longer the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. These ugly human ships with their crude appearance and brutal effectiveness had shattered that illusion forever. The Emperor's aide returned with the daily reports. "Your Majesty, the Zalarian Commonwealth has requested a meeting to discuss their trade agreements. The Centauri Federation wants to renegotiate their tribute payments, and 17 other species have submitted formal complaints about the preferential treatment given to humans." Zarthus sighed. "Schedule them all for next week, and prepare a statement explaining that any species achieving comparable military capability will be granted similar status." As his aide hurried away to handle the diplomatic chaos, the Emperor turned back to his window. In the distance, a human cargo ship was unloading strange new technologies that Imperial scientists barely understood. These humans had indeed changed everything. The age of unchallenged Imperial dominance was over. The age of partnership had begun, and somewhere in the back of his mind, the Emperor wondered what other surprises might be waiting beyond the galactic rim, watching and learning from humanity's example.